And welcome back. This is the Nick Siekierski podcast. Today we have a guest, Andrew. He is a former academic from the UK, and of all places, he has chosen Warsaw to live. Welcome, Andrew.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm doing fine. Why don't you tell us a little bit about why you ended up in Poland?
Oh, long story. I used to work in universities. I then left my job, went travelling and did consultancy for a while. And the first time I went to Poland was almost 3 years ago, I'd say. I was leading a tour of the Polish university system and wrote a report on it. Spent 1 week going around all universities, 3 weeks backpacking around Poland and loving it. I was thinking at that time, should I move to Poland, but decided against it and tried to make the UK work. And then after that, recently I just realised it wasn't going to work. And I also hadn't been doing any teaching for a while, so I decided to move to Poland and teach English for a bit.
What was it about Poland that, like you said, you loved about it from the beginning?
The short answer is it reminds me of the UK when I was younger in the 70s and the 80s. The UK has got a lot poorer as well as getting richer at the same time, though we're materially better off. Certain things such as family and also a sense of national identity, I think, have actually worn off as well. And I don't think that's a good thing. Also, it's just interesting probably to go back. I share a birthday with Poland.
November 11th is Polish Independence Day.
And my birthday.
It is your birthday as well.
So I do remember sitting in a restaurant in Warsaw. And I was actually talking to a very nice Pole. And she's working abroad. She came over for the weekend. And we were talking about this and how things have changed. And what I thought I was finding just very surprising, actually, is a kind of a bittersweet moment when during that day I was seeing people, families, individuals, actually celebrating Poland with Polish flags and actually realising that in the United Kingdom you probably would have at minimum been insulted and slurred for it, and at worst, possibly arrested.
So Poland turns out to be a place with a lot more freedom than the UK.
Well, I don't think you can get arrested in Poland for making an edgy YouTube video with your pug.
And by this time, you'd already decided to move to Poland.
Yes, I'd found work. I was just completing the training for the English school that I'm currently working with.
And so even though you said from the beginning that you loved Poland, I'm sure there are some things that you didn't love, or maybe were a little bit different than you expected. How has the experience been of getting adjusted to life in Poland?
I will never complain about the UK tax authorities again. That's been tricky. It's almost like walking into something out of Kafka.
Yeah.
And I've got more of that to come. It is difficult moving into a country where you don't speak any of the language, even in a capital city which is used to having foreigners.
Yeah.
I lived in Berlin before, but at the time I spoke A2 German. Now I'm B2, so and being able to speak some of the language at least gets you somewhere. And it's quite difficult here. If you're having to find out what forms to do, what process to do. And things just work differently as well.
So did you find that Poles had their level of English, as far as people that you encounter in the bureaucracy, is a mixed bag, or it tends to be a little worse than you expected?
I think I wouldn't say expected, because I remember in Berlin when I did address registration, and Meldung, that the person on the other side could not speak any English at all. And I was sitting there with basic German trying to explain what my PhD certificate said, because the German authorities want you to show your PhD certificate so the tax office can call me Herr Doctor.
Yeah.
That was a challenge.
Yeah.
The problem is actually not being able to read anything and know what your expectations are, and asking several people and getting slightly different answers.
Yes. Yeah, some polls, they have a certainty about what you have to do, and it turns out that that's not quite what you have to do, or it's only part of the answer.
Yeah, it took me 4 months before I realised how to get a tax number.
Okay. But you have one.
I have one now.
You're still waiting for some more information, though, right?
No, I just now sorting out the tax return for the small bit of last year I was here.
Yeah. And how has the English teaching experience been?
Oh, I love teaching I loved teaching when I was at university.
Yeah.
I used to teach computer science and some business.
Yeah.
Great, loved it. In fact, over the last 5-6 years since I quit my job and went travelling, and occasional consultancy, teaching was something I missed. So it was great to get back in. It was great to teach something different, which was English.
Yeah.
I qualified actually 2.5 years ago just for something to do.
Yeah.
And to teach English. So I like that. I like the Polish are actually pretty good students. They generally will do homework. They are happily quite communicative.
Yeah.
And I think so long as you don't make your English lesson like they had at school, which was grammar lessons,
Sure.
then actually they respond very well. And it's nice to see people improve over time. So I like that. But I think at this stage of things, I'm looking at probably doing something a little different. I've got some different plans for the future. So I may not. I think I'm probably 6 months out of language school, and that'll be, I think, enough. And then I'll probably branch out on my own.
What are some of your plans or ideas for the future?
Well, I'd like to do some private lessons. I'd like to be more in control of my own work.
Yeah.
And because I've got academic English behind me, I've written papers, and I've also done consultancy work. I can offer high-level academic and business English. Also, I'd like to work with some universities, think tanks, and other around, either in terms of language services or actually in terms of just producing some academic work.
Sure.
Yeah, there's some interesting projects here I could get involved with.
Sure. Yeah, like I've told you before, I think once you've gotten your foot in the water and you've gotten some experience, you have a vast amount of knowledge and I think a lot to contribute to the environment here in Poland. So yeah. I'm looking forward to see how much you can do in the near future.
Yeah. What I probably would might mention is there's, as an outside observer, it comes back to the 11th of November, which I think was quite a pivotal moment in me definitely deciding it was the right choice. I was actually absolutely appalled and embarrassed by how the British media portrayed what happened on that day. Mm-hmm. If you actually believe the BBC, 60,000 fascists marched through Warsaw on that day, which was completely untrue. And actually, if you knew anything about the history of Poland and their role in the Second World War, actually a complete insult.
Yeah. Not just the BBC, but members of the European Parliament, CNN, international media.
Yeah, and but for the national broadcaster of the UK, with its apparent reputation for objective reporting, that was, I want to say I was there.
Yeah.
And I know a lot about German history as well. I've lived there, and I speak the language. That's not accurate.
Yeah.
Simply not accurate. And I think after seeing things, one thing I've come to the conclusion of, and it's something you've said in a different way, and written about, is other people are writing about what's going on in Poland and not the Polish in English. And although whatever you may feel about English being the de facto world language, opinion makers are definitely operating in English.
Yeah.
And if the Polish are not actually articulating their position clearly in English and publicising it clearly in English, other people are going to do it for them. And I don't think they'll have the best interests of Polish at heart.
And you've come to sort of see what the situation is like here in that regard. And hopefully it's something that can be changed and something that we've done some work on to improve. But what do you think the potential is for Poland being able to really tell the story about itself in English? One other thing that we've talked about too is something called Poland Today, or is it
Poland Daily?
Poland Daily.
Poland Daily, yes.
Poland
the
Daily.
Telewizja Republika show. Yes.
Exactly. What are your impressions of that show and in general what Poland can do in that regard?
I actually thought it was very brave of the Telewizja Republika to do that, because there's no guarantee there's going to be an audience, and after all, these companies have to make a living.
Yeah.
Watching it, it's definitely moved along. How long has it been going? 3 weeks, a month by now? It's definitely improving. Like any new venture, like say when you watch the first season of a TV show, you see it has to still find its feet. But from day on day, you're seeing an improvement in what they're doing. The presentation is sharper. I think they're beginning to learn which stories have traction.
Yeah.
And I think it's a good thing. The only thing I probably would say is, okay, I know that certain Polish TV channels have certain political views and differences. Well, that's okay. Well, if you don't want a conservative-leaning channel to report on Poland in English, well, ask a liberal-leaning TV channel to do it in Polish. In fact, the more the better, I'd say. Yeah. Because I think that's a discussion, but it at least gives some people an insight into what's going on.
Right.
And I think that's a good thing. And there also you can see the social media slowly improving around that. As an academic, Polish scholarship is not as well known and disseminated. A lot of the most influential Polish scholars and academics aren't in Poland.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and that is an ongoing. It's going to be an ongoing problem.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm about to start a big translation project at the Polish Academy of Sciences for a book that they're going to publish, and I'll be translating everything into English. And I've only started to look into it, but it seems like their English publications are just very, very meager. So they produce a lot of work, a lot of research, but not much in English. So it's a very, at least here at the Academy, it seems like a very hermetic environment. And there are a lot of very intelligent people who have things to say and who even know English quite well when they need to use it at a conference or something like that. But the product of their research and all their many hundreds of hours of digging through archives tends to stay in Poland in a very small circle of academics who are interested in that topic and, of course, who also know Polish, but it's not really reaching as far as it could.
Yeah, there will be, but it could be different in STEM, science, technology, engineering, mathematics. But even so, you can have quite a good speaking ability in the language, but it doesn't necessarily translate well to writing. Right. The number of mistakes in English I correct from native speakers when they write their projects will testify to this.
Yeah.
And there is definitely a difference in writing style as well. Working with you on translations for a think tank, I think was quite indicative of that.
Yeah.
There are certain points that need to. It's not just language; it's also strategic way how you write for an academic audience. The cultural differences that you need to be aware of. And they do differ. People from different countries write papers differently.
Yeah. And you mentioned it before, and I think this has been my observation as well, that the English language instruction in Polish schools heavily focuses on grammar, vocabulary, but not very much on some of these other things that you mentioned and conversations.
What I've learnt from the Polish students that I've had the pleasure to teach is things are changing. Traditionally, the method has been what's called by language teachers grammar translate. You learn lots of grammar, vocabularies, and they give you translation exercises.
Yeah.
The English teacher may actually not speak English that well.
Right.
They may be about B2, my level of German, and I would not teach German.
Yeah.
I could happily have a conversation in it, but I will not teach it.
Yeah.
It would just be a disaster. And I have an English accent. Wirklich, wenn ich Deutsch spreche ich Deutsch mit einem starken englischen Accent.
That injects some comic effect into German society, right?
The Germans found it mildly amusing. But they were grateful at least I learnt it.
Yeah, yeah.
And I'm sure when I eventually learn Polish, I probably will sound like a Brit speaking Polish, but that's okay.
Fine.
That's fine. Nobody minds.
I sound like an American speaking Polish, so it's fine.
They don't necessarily have good models, and so the reason why they like language schools, at least the ones that use what are called the communicative methods, or some variation of it, is that the teacher's entirely in the target language.
Yeah.
Remember, I can't speak Polish.
Yeah.
You know, it's really proszę kawa, to jest olewek. So unless I'm asking for a pencil, or coffee, my Polish is rather limited. Yeah. So I can't explain anything in Polish. So when they have to communicate, and they have an accurate language model to deal with as well, and very little in grammar classes. Generally, you would teach grammar in the modern English, modern English schools around the situation. So a bad lesson would be, today we're going to do the present perfect. Yeah. You just won't do it. You just don't do it. Let's talk about a topic which has descriptions of things in the past, and then we would get them to do past tenses in context. Sure. So that is quite difficult. One observation I did make, and this was when I was going around Poland for the first time backpacking. I was in Poznan. Yes. And the hostel had the TV on, and it was Friends. You don't dub it, do you? You have somebody narrating over it. I think from what I could tell, you have somebody in Polish going, he said, she said. It's the same voice for the man and the woman.
Oh yeah, it is. Yeah. So it is from what I've seen, it's dubbing, but it is like you said, there aren't separate voices, and it's not quite the same thing. And knowing both languages, I hear the way they translate some things, and I just have to shake my head because it's not really what they what they said. But
okay, well, that actually is about the worst thing you could do. Yeah. If you actually wanted to, if you say go to Denmark, for example, where the Danes' ability to speak English is outstanding, the Netherlands, which is even better. What they generally do is they'll put subtitles.
Yeah, for everything.
For everything. Right. So you can pick up the language that way. So you actually hear a model, you hear a translation underneath. Yeah. But even the form of dubbing, it's strange. No different voices. It doesn't even go with the flow of the conversation. Sure. I mean, I don't speak any Polish, but it didn't match.
Yeah, exactly.
If there was actually one thing the Polish government could actually do to improve foreign language acquisition amongst Poles, to which there was a large appetite for, is actually to use subtitles.
Yeah. No, I think that'd be an excellent thing. I get frustrated when there's certain movies and things that they don't have a subtitled version. It's just all dubbed. So I think there are many Poles, they know English quite well, but they're missing certain elements. And one of the most important things, I think, is also confidence, where I believe that there's something in the Polish education system, and I had some experience with it when I was a child, where there's such a focus on not making mistakes, and that making a mistake is seen as a punishable offense, and people become very sensitive to making mistakes, and because of that, they are quite shy when they actually have to speak English, and so they have these, Poles call them complexes of related to language and other things. So
it varies from student to student. The Polish have a reputation in the UK of having a capacity for hard work and actually pushing against the difficult situation, which actually works quite well when you're doing language teaching, because you can go in, there's a zone where you don't want to push students too far because they're going to panic. You don't want to make it too easy; they won't learn. What I push with them is to say, well, you have to find some students do have need a bit of confidence building. Yeah, and you have to judge that quickly. Others are actually they're happy if you just push them right up hard against it. Yeah. And once they've got some confidence and some improvement, Polish students are actually are admirably able to and actually like being pushed. Yeah. Once they realise it's okay to make mistakes.
Sure. Well, Andrew, our time is just about up, but it's been a pleasure talking to you, and I hope that we'll have more of these conversations in the future. Is
I
there
hope so.
anything else you'd like to say at the end?
No, not at this point. I think we'll have plenty of things to talk about later.
All right, so that was my guest, Andrew, and this is Nick Shikarsky Podcast. You can visit me at researchteacher.com. Talk to you next time.